Well, hello there once again, friends and fans. Raptor here. Welcome back to Deck Spec, where we're talking logistics today. So logistics units here in the deck creation menu are very important units. In fact, it's basically impossible to make a deck in Wargame AirLand Battle without the use of a command vehicle, also known as a CV, and also sometimes known as a CP. So basically, the usage of a CV or command vehicle is to capture control zones in Wargame AirLand Battle. So what I'm going to do for simplicity is I'm going to eliminate all the NATO decks other than just the basic American ones, just to start with the old classic M151A1 CP, which was also featured in European Escalation. So it is a 100-point trained vehicle that you can put into your decks, and when you do, you get 6 of them there. And basically you can see all the stats of it that we went over in the previous video, but those aren't so important as just kind of thinking about what exactly you'll be doing with your deck. For instance, if you're going to play very defensively, instead of getting a lightly armored cheap command vehicle, you may want something like an APC or even possibly a tank like the CMD M60A1 here. You can see the specs for this as well. Not only can it do battle against tanks if it was fleeing, but it also has good armor, so that way it can take a lot of hits. So let's go over everything, not only just CVs, but also everything in logistics in general. So here is my basic setup for a very standard deck in Wargame AirLand Battle. So what you probably want to do is you'd want to give yourself a FOB, a forward operating base, which is the supplier of everything in the game. So for instance, if you have artillery firing next to it, it will auto resupply those. The next thing you'll want is the the M151A1 CP. I may have said that wrong earlier, but forgive me, it's a pretty tricky name sometimes. A lot of 1s and A's in there. And then, of course, you'll want a transport vehicle for your logistics, like, for instance, this 10-point M35 cargo truck. Now, there's probably going to be a lot more debate over cargo trucks than commands, I'd say, at least from me. So I'm just going to go ahead and explain what each one of these vehicles does, and then we'll kind of move on to the next section for another video in infantry. When we reach the end, when we go through infantry, support, tank, recon, vehicles, helicopters, and planes, then I will finally make a deck, and you can play along with me. So for purposes here, I'm just going to go ahead and start with what we have here. We have 24 M35s versus HEMETs here. That could be 8. Now keep in mind, I've also not, in my deck spec logistics that I've just made, which I will delete at the end of this video, I haven't specifically picked any units or any allied nation, meaning I have not specified my deck to be before 1980. I have not picked a certain country, so that way I can't get prototypes. So basically, it's just the very basic NATO deck that, and pretty similar to European Escalation. All right, let's go through everything. So we have our M151A1 CP. You get 6 of them, 100 points. There's all the statistics there for them. Very good if you plan on basically leaving one of these behind and just advancing with everybody else. This is a good thing to just kind of leave in the back and kind of keep it out of the way. If you have huge command zones, this is the perfect vehicle. It can basically hide anywhere. It's very small, and you can, as you can see, the stealth may be poor, but since it's so small, and since it can hide in a bush, there's all the stealth you'll need. The step up from that is the M1025 Humvee CP, and basically this is very similar to the M151, except it's got an M2 Browning machine gun on it, and it can also go a lot faster. 55 off-road for the M151, and of course this Humvee can do 90, so pretty damn good. That's kilometers, by the way. So for added speed, added speed not only on-road but off-road, I should say they're both the same on-road, but for added speed in general, that's what you want. So the M114A1 is just like the Humvee, except it is 30 kilometers slower than the Humvee, and what it adds there is armor. Now the size, keep in mind here, is medium. As where the first two were small, this now can't hide as easily, and the optics are poor, which means that if there's infantry sneaking up on it, it's going to be killed very easily. And there is a little bit of armor to the front of this, so it could survive a direct hit maybe from an RPG or something. It all depends on what it gets hit by, but it does add a little bit more durability. The M577 is the same thing, minus the machine gun, and what it makes up for here is autonomy is what it's called, and that is your fuel efficiency. Here you can get 450 kilometers on the M114A1, but the M577 right here, which it's a really funny unit. It looks basically like a square van with like either a projector or an air conditioning unit right at the front of it. So basically this right here, what you get is with no machine gun, you do get a little extra distance out of it, and actually some better armor as well. It has better armor on the bottom, or on the sides, I should say. Is it actually? Let me use my own menu here to figure that out. Yes, side damage is higher, or rather, side armor is good, or I should say, much better. Okay, so the CMD M60A1 here is basically a tank. Yep, that's right. It's big, it's bad, and it can only do 50 kilometers an hour. But you know what? It can do 500. It can go 500 kilometers before it has to turn around, and it's got a nice cannon on it too. So if you get rushed by some infantry, this cannon here can fire at that infantry and stun them while you make your escape. Not to mention there's added armor: front armor of 9, side armor of 4, top armor of 2, and booty armor of 2 as well. So 7 rounds a minute there on the main cannon, and 500 on the M2, which is I think at the top there. So really cool on that. 105 millimeters of pain. So that's pretty much all you need to know on American logistic, or ground commands, I should say, for logistics. Let's cover the air. There you go. The UH-1A ACP. No armor on it, no machine guns on it. It is a 100-point flanker, basically. The great thing about these helicopters is that if you bring in this helicopter plus a few, like for instance a Marine assault deck, if you bring in this Huey and a couple of other Hueys and you also have them covered by aircraft, you can basically get to the side or behind the enemy and you can call in all your units from there. If you just call in this with some other defenses around your main point and you come in with the helicopters, it's going to be a bad day for the enemy. They're never going to expect it, and it'll allow you to move around the battlefield and be mobile and capture points before. As you can see there, it does 205 kilometers per hour. There's no road speed on it, of course, because it's a it's an air unit, and the autonomy on it is only 300. So be wary there. It can't go very far, and it can't go very fast. But and 205 is, of course, faster than any of the ground vehicles, but it's not good when it comes to helicopters, not at all. So let's look at the M35. Now we're talking supplies. Supplies go with the FOBs. When supply trucks deliver ammunition, spare parts, or fuel to men and machines, they eventually run out and have to come back. Here you can see this M35 has a road speed of 150, as most vehicles do, and can do 90 off-road. Bad optics, but they do have an unlimited autonomy. So never worry about running out of fuel with them. Size is medium, strength is 5, no armor on it whatsoever, but for 10 points you can't beat it. You can call out 4 of these for 40 points, and you can basically refill an entire infantry squad and then some. So these are really good if you're supplying infantry. These are also really good if you're just supplying maybe like one chaparral or a PVADS. It's always good to keep it in your deck on the side. I don't always play with it, but when I do, I appreciate and respect the M35 cargo truck. Let's move to the HEMTT. This is what we call it, the HEMTT. It is basically a giant fuel truck, which also doubles as a supply truck as well. It kind of looks like something you'd see on an airfield, doesn't it? So basically, what this is a upgraded M35, except it can hold a hell of a lot more. As where this one has a fuel... By the way, the fuel capacity... I've always thought of it as, or actually, no, supply trucks can't run out of ammunition. But where it says fuel capacity, I believe this is how much they can actually hold when they're delivering supplies. So this truck here carries 500 for 10 points. This carries 1500 for 35. And it's only one vehicle to manage, so if you manage to slip this by enemy forces when you need to get to a very critical resupply point, this is what you'll want to use. The road speed on it is off-road speed is 60, but the road speed is just as good. It is big, it is bad in everything other than just transporting supplies. That's all it's meant for. This is very good for artillery, tank battalions. If you got some damaged tanks that are near death and everything, you'll need to bring up more than one of these. Probably bring up 2 or 3, and this can definitely repair all of your tanks and all of your men and all your transports. Not recommended though to land helicopters or heavy, like for instance anything that fires missiles. Yeah. Hogs would be fine landing next to this, but if you were to land, for instance, a Apache that is completely empty next to a group of these, you're better off going back to the FOB, to be honest. You really are. All right, let's go to the Chinook. Chinook is basically, well, wow, that's a big boy. So it's big, it's bad, and it's, by bad I mean good. It's 65 points, though. 65 points to bring in, wow, just 200 liters of fuel and then some. Yeah, so anyway, this again is good for flanking. This is also good for, this could be good for mortars too. Mortars actually could also be refilled by the Hemet here, but the Chinook is really what you want to use for large groups, especially if they're isolated. If you're trying to break out of a bulge, or if you have, like for instance, if you're playing Siege, you may want to bring these along. These can also keep up with your, your infantry units and such, and you can bring them back and forth really easily. They take a lot of micromanaging. You need to make sure the enemy can't fire at them. They will try to shoot them down. They're worth a lot of points. This also goes for the Russian or the Soviet aircraft, the Mi-26. So don't be fooled. Even though this might seem very appealing or somewhat scary, you should at least give it a try. I used to use it a lot in European escalation, but it's just kind of too much of a good thing. The bad thing is if enemy forces are advancing, this has to fly to get out of the way, and of course that could mean that you're going to get shot down pretty easily, or at least they'll know where your forces are, because obviously you just took off from there, so they'll know your exact position. So yeah, there you go. So anyway, we went through all the commands. We went through the FOB. We went through aircraft and such to use. Keep in mind other countries have very similar things. We'll just take a look at what, for instance, the British have. There's some of their units, and they're fairly similar. Of course, you've got air delivery and ground delivery, which is cheap. The Stalwart here is basically an M35, but just a little different. So they do vary in points. Didn't want to click on infantry. They vary in points, but of course you have air helicopter transports. This here for the French is very good, 30 points, and it can and this is really great for armor or really anything actually. But we'll go through some of those other nations later as we get into more specifics. I really want to keep it basic now. I'm going to give you a look, even if you don't own the game, at what exactly they can do. Actually, I should turn some of these others off. These are what the Danish get. These are what the Swedes get for logistics vehicles and supply trucks. And all the FOBs are the same, by the way. No FOB is different. They all look the same. They all act the same. They're all 75 points. And there's really no stats on them other than they have they do have a strength of 20. They're very big. They have bad optics, poor stealth. It should be like less than poor. And they can hold 10,000 liters. So there you go. A little weird. So think of when you see fuel capacity, it shouldn't just be fuel. That's how much it can supply. So when you're picking out, like for instance, let's go back to the Brits. This can hold 750 for 15 points, and the American M35 can hold. It can hold 500 for 10. So there you go, a little bit of a difference there, quite a bit actually. So if you're making a multi-NATO deck, that's all you need to know. Look through the specifics of all of these vehicles, find what's right for you. Again, if you're bringing up a heavy tank deck, it might be best to bring up some heavier supplies because armor is going to get hit. Armor has ATGMs, armor has a lot of shells, and so they're going to need a lot more supply than infantry. So if you're carrying, if you're going armor, you might want the Hemet. If you're going infantry, you might want the M35. And if you're going support, you might want the CH-47. But all of these vehicles work together, and they all work with any other deck. I'm sure a very skilled player could use the Chinook much better than I can. So there you go. So next we'll be covering infantry, and again in the future I'll go through all of these NATO nations, and we'll keep it pretty much in the United States, just for terms of examples. But keep in mind, all of these other nations offer great alternatives for your supply needs. So until next time, I'll see you on Deck Spec. Bye.